right, Charles Carrin here, and let's take a minute and talk about kingdom truth, things that are of essential nature and benefit to us. And I want to ask this question: are there spiritual ways in which I can increase my financial strength? Now, this is a topic that touches all of us. It's difficult for the church to talk about it, but I just simply want to share with you what I think are principles that will bless you and bless the kingdom. Why did Jesus say, "Give, and it will be given to you"? He was not putting any conditions on that. He just simply said, "Give, and it will be given to you." He was not talking about money only, but he was talking about life principles and things that are essential to all of us. But I want to dwell on the word currency, and I want you to listen carefully. Money is called currency. And why is that? The fact is that the word currency signifies movement. It is movement. Well, let's ask the question: what is the difference in a lake or a pond and a river? The difference fundamentally is that there is movement in the river. Now all of us come to times perhaps when the movement, financial movement in our life suddenly comes to a standstill. It's no longer a river. It's no longer a current. It has become a pond. It has become a lake. Dead still. What can I do? And Jesus said, yes, you can. What can I do to change that stillness into movement? We have the answer. You've done it many times. I have too. We've stood on the edge of a still pond or a lake. We have thrown a rock into it. What happened? Instantly, there was movement. There were ripples on the pond, ripples on the lake. And where it had been at a dead still a moment before, there is now action and movement in it. Now, that same principle is, I think, what Jesus is sharing with us. That if our financial statement and condition is at a standstill, do something. And that's why he said, give, and it will be given to you. Now, we make the mistake, he's thinking only of giving money. The church says that oftentimes. Well, that's certainly not true. We can give so many other things when there is no cash to give. And this is a point I want to emphasize. If your finances are at a standstill, if you've come to that pond state, you can change it. How do you change it? You throw into the pond. You force movement into it. And by forcing movement into the pond, you change the whole texture of the surface. You create change. And I'm convinced that in a far grander way, in the spiritual aspect, that's what Jesus is teaching. We do not have to accept the status quo. We do not have to go into our room and simply fall across the bed and weep and cry because our bank account is empty, nothing left. We all face those moments at times. I grew up in the 1930s, in the Great Depression. And let me tell you, it was great, and it was a depression. And there were many Americans without work. There were many homeless people, and we had what we then called hobos on the street. And I remember them coming to my door, my mother and father's house, and just saying, "Do you have a little food?" And it was a terrible time. But I also know this, that our state and condition was no better than everybody else's, but we never lacked a meal. And I remember the day of my father's funeral, going into the kitchen and picking up an old jar opener. And when I picked it up, it moved me to tears, because I remembered in the 1930s, in the height of the Depression, when a man came to the door selling these jar openers, and I think it cost $0.25. My dad bought it. And after the peddler was gone, my mother dropped into a chair, dropped the jar opener in her lap, and said, "Well, now we have a jar opener. If we could just afford a jar to open." It was a hard slam. But do you know, 30 years later, when my father died, I saw that old jar opener in the kitchen. I went to my mother and I asked her, I said, "Do you remember the day that Daddy bought this jar opener and gave that peddler the last bit of money we had?" "Yes," she said, "I remember it." And I said, "Well, Mama, I've just done a little math. I know the number of years that was, and I know a good safe guess as to how many jars of canned food a year you opened with this jar." And I told her it was shocking how many jars that old jar opener had opened and provided us with the food she had canned. I remember that. And I want to encourage you with this simple fact. Jesus said, "Give, and it will be given to you." In other words, when your pond is at a standstill and there is no movement in it, you can change that. We have the power in the grace of God to throw something into someone else's life. And in putting movement into their life, we simultaneously put it into our own. I believe that. I believe that. And Jesus was not saying, "Give and it'll be given to you, just give to the church." No, the whole lifestyle that Jesus taught was the life of giving, of loving, of understanding, and of being compassionate. And the Christian who depends just on a religious standard and a religious appearance, but whose heart is not a heart of giving, is not a Christian. Let me tell you, be very honest, straightforward. Jesus said, "Give, it will be given to you." What can you give? Well, sometimes you may not have money to give, but you can still throw something on the pond. You can stop the stillness of it. You can break into that by giving your love. And in so doing, you cause movement in the pond. And that movement is what spiritually brings blessing and life to you. All right? It's so awesome what Jesus taught. We just love that. And so God bless you. We'll talk again soon. Have a blessed, wonderful day of godly giving and godly loving and kingdom serving. All right? Bye.